go through Genesis 1:11, it says that he is going to create these foods, and then in verse 12 he does, and then in verse 29 he tells us what our diet is, and in 129 and 30 to 31 he says that, okay, this is your diet. In 2:16 and 17, we've already gone through these, so I'm quickly doing it. He now says that he commands our diet, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou may freely eat. We see that he says that you surely will die if you eat of this forbidden tree. We now see in 3:1 where we're warned about Satan, that Satan is the most subtle of all the beasts that God had created. And then in the same verse, it tells us what that subtleness or what that lie is about. And it's about health reform, and it's about if you can eat of that tree and you surely not die. It says it right in 3:4. It says, and the serpent said unto the woman, you shall surely not die, for God knows that if you eat of it, then your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So we are a people who's continuing to rebel against God's health reform message. I think that some of us just don't know. Also, I think some are in rebellion and don't want to know, but I think that there's a good share who just don't know, because this message has not really been publicized really too well in this way. Of course, the physical benefits have been publicized. You can find, thousands of YouTubes and articles and all sorts of people around the world, Adventists and non-Adventists, who are sharing this health reform message. And then if you go down into 3:11, God says, really, did you actually disobey the only command that I've actually given you? And then in 17, God says, because you've disobeyed the only command that I've given you, therefore the earth is cursed. We see also that, we see in Revelation 22:2, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, there was the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruit, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So we see really, and then if you put on top of that, because from Genesis to Revelation, on day one, then I went through all of those examples of all the people who are disregarding God's laws of health, and they literally are being lost, and they were lost. So we see that God has a very specific diet for us in our time. We've been studying about it all week so far, in both our afternoon class, Counsels on Diet and Foods, and in the evening programs. And so we see that this is a high fruit diet. This is God's way. Because in 129, he says that I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding to seed, to you it shall be for meat. And so we see that God has a very specific diet. It has always been a whole food, plant-based diet. And now what we're going to do is we are going to build what the food guide pyramid looks like according to the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy. Fruit has always been the mainstay of God's people. It's the mainstay of the diet for his people. It's always been. Here in Revelation 22, we see that that's where we're heading again. And remember that we are here on earth as a practice run to show and to prove that we are safe to take to heaven. And that he's also in the making of that 144,000, which quite is possible that we will all live to that time. if we don't die prematurely. If we have an extended normal lifetime, I think that that time is possible. If it's not, it's still our diet. It's still the diet of choice, whether we go through that 144,000 experience or not. If people give up fruit, they generally, if people give up a food group and they're told, okay, you have meat and dairy and you have processed foods and you have fats and protein and fruits and vegetables, which food group would you give up? Now, you don't think about it with that kind of question, but you answer that question by how you spend your money. And the far majority of the people are willing to give up fruit because they feel like it has no value. They don't understand the importance of it. It's actually the dietary choice of God's people. So what are the composition properties of fruit? Fruit is, these are things that are not found in animal products. These are things that are exclusively found for fruit. We must have these if we want health. It's got biochemicals, or the phytochemicals, antioxidants, bioflavonoids, vitamins, minerals, fiber. It's got no cholesterol, no saturated fat. So there we go. We're already on a track for how do we take care of people with high cholesterol and high blood pressure. There we go right there. And we didn't even get very far yet. So it's low in fat and calories compared to any other food group, except the lower fat is vegetables. It's very high in simple carbohydrates, which our body needs to run efficiently. And we have this understanding that a Twinkie is the same thing as an apple, and that I can eat this processed candy and junk food, and that it's equivalent, because they're both simple sugars. Our brain and our body wants to run off of simple sugars. And so the food industry, aka Satan, I didn't mean like the food industry, because there's good food too, but I should say Satan has used some food industries to work his work, and that is to reformulate how we think about nutrition. Well, since we need simple carbohydrates, or I should say, since simple carbohydrates cause so many problems in our body, and fruit is simple carbohydrates, therefore fruit is bad too. That's Satan's war on fruit. That we put in the category of processed carbohydrates, like sugar. We have a tendency to think that, well, fruit is a simple sugar, so therefore fruit is bad too. There is nothing the same between candy or a Twinkie and an apple. There's just no difference. There's no similarities. One has phytochemicals, antioxidants, bioflavonoids, vitamins, minerals, fiber, and yet the processed ones has none of those. None of it. It's also, fruit actually has all amino acids. There was a book written probably 40 years ago, and in that book it was talking about a plant-based diet, and it was trying to give a case for why we should eat a plant-based diet. And in that book, it talked about one of the problems of eating fruit, and that it doesn't have enough protein, and that it's deficient in amino acids. Animal products have proteins. Plant products have amino acids. A protein is like a pearl necklace, like you would see a lady wear. It's got a strand that keeps all of these pearls together. That's a protein. An amino acid is each one of those pearls that is not attached to a string. So when we eat animal products, which is a whole protein, our body has to go through a huge process of breaking down every single breaking off that protein to where every single amino acid is independent and separated. And that takes a long time. Generally, when we are eating a plant-based diet, in less than 24 hours, that meal is gone. For animal products, it takes like 3 days. That's why it takes so long. It also slows down our metabolism by 11 to 13%. And that also is a reason why, in general, why meat eaters are heavier than non-meat eaters in North America. Many of Kenyans, it really doesn't, I can't say that because so many of you are looking great of normal weight and you still eat meat. And, but so I'm going to say that about North America because that's what the research shows. But see, there's also a difference between your food here and our food over there. I think ours is light years ahead of yours here. You guys have really done a good job of protecting a lot of your foods and your crops, unlike North America. It's changing though for you. But now the recent research shows that that all fruit has all amino acids. And that is as of about, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. That is new research. All fruit has all amino acids. It's just that some are very high in some amino acids and then very low in others, where other fruit might be high where something's low, but it's going to be low where another fruit is high. So if we're getting a nice variety of fruits, we actually get everything that we need. Fruit is also calorically life-sustainable. If we are on a 100% fruit diet, some people in some climates can actually get away with 100% fruit. You have to live in a place where you own your own property, you have your own fruit trees, you can pick right from the tree and eat it. You know what's in the soil, you're feeding the soil, so therefore you know that your nutrients in your fruit is good. And so there are some people in the world who are actually doing a really good job of eating all fruit. For the rest of us who don't have that honor, we're a little low in a few of the minerals that fruit does not cover. And what covers that are greens and a few nuts and seeds. That's all we need to be life-sustaining with excellent health and disease reversal. A variety of fruit, a variety of greens. I'm not even talking about vegetables. I'm only talking about greens. So like romaine, your pumpkin leaves, your spinach, all the leafy greens, and a few raw nuts and seeds. Our body doesn't need a food group. Our body needs certain nutrients. Though we've been bought a bill of goods that we need to eat from all these different food groups, but it's actually not the full truth. Fruit actually is when we eat plenty of it, it actually gets into our cellular, gets into our cells at a cellular level and detoxes us like no other food group can. Not even vegetables, not even greens. Greens are like the number 2. So we have fruit and greens. Those are our top 2. Because we can live without greens if we live in a certain part, as long as all the ingredients are right. And I don't recommend that for people. I'm just saying that there are some people under very certain circumstances that can do it because they have full control over what they eat and they grow everything. So if we are trying to detox from something, whether it is alcohol, tobacco, drugs, cheese, meat, eggs, dairy, sugar, anything, anything that you are trying to detox from, you can, the more fruit that you have, the better. It eliminates cravings. The first thing that when people tell me that they are having a lot of cravings, that tells me right away that they're not eating enough fruit. And I've been here in Kenya long enough. This is my second time here. I was already here for 2.5 months, and I would say that the far majority of everyone that I have met eats very little fruit. I'm going to show you what this looks like. And there are some who don't eat any, and it has a very high starch diet. But let's continue. There's no other food group like fruit that has the nutrient panel that fruit does. There's just nothing. There's nothing that compares. Not vegetables, not meat, not dairy, not anything that has the impressive nutrient panel that fruit does. So those were the things that are specifically towards fruit. These are the things that are not found now in animal products. We do not find vitamin C or very little. Vitamin C, E, K, B9, B7, flavonoids, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory properties, fiber, complex carbohydrates, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is greens. Chlorophyll comes from the sun. As it touches our greens, it touches our trees. That's chlorophyll, all that green that you see. Because as soon as the sun goes away, and if you didn't have it for a month, all these trees would turn yellow, and eventually the leaves would come off. So it's we need chlorophyll, and if we ever need a blood transfusion, it's amazing that it is only one molecule away from blood. And if we could find somebody who would do a blood transfusion of chlorophyll, boy, our body would just be really happy. But the problem is trying to find someone who would do something like that. Prebiotics, we don't need to take prebiotic supplements because that's what our fiber does. As we are eating natural fiber foods, such as fruit and vegetables and beans, it already makes our prebiotics and our probiotics. Sulforaphane, magnesium, natural nitrates. Now that natural nitrates is not the nitrates that you find in processed meats, like bologna and hot dogs and ham slices and stuff like that. That natural nitrates are found in only fruits and vegetables in their raw state. Once they get cooked, it destroys some of that. So we want to eat as much as we can. Natural nitrates, what it does is it keeps the inside of our vessels very elastic. And so it keeps our blood pressure low, and so it's not creating like a rubber band effect. Because if we're not getting natural nitrates in the form of fruits and vegetables, our blood pressure goes up because our blood vessels are supposed to be like a nice brand new stretchy rubber band. But when we're not getting that, then we've lost that ingredient for our vessel health, and now it's like an aged rubber band, and eventually that rubber band will just snap and break. And that's pretty much the same thing that happens to us. This is Satan's war on fruit. Satan's war on fruit is a high meat diet. I know you may not have heard of all of these, but I did look it up in Kenya, and these diets are here, but it sounds like they're just not as popular. They might be called something different, but the Atkins diet, the South Beach, the Zone, the protein, the Eat for Your Blood type, which the doctor who popularized the Eat for Your Blood type, that he actually came out about a year or two ago saying that it was all bogus. And but yet he's made a ton of money off of it. Then there's the ketogenic diet, the paleo, and the carnivore diet. Basically what this is it is a high meat diet. And it just might be called something else here. There are lots and lots of misconceptions about fruit. Do you want to sit right here? So we have a lot of misconceptions out there about fruit, and these are some of them. We're told don't eat bananas and grapes or they're going to make you fat with a carb overload. If that were true, I have had bananas probably every day for 30 years, and sometimes I do a mono meal of just bananas, and I might have like 7 or 8 bananas in one meal, and that's my whole entire meal. If that were true, I would need to be on a weight loss program. Mangoes and cherries have too much sugar. I don't know where some of these things come from. Cranberries cause kidney stones, but yet it's many times it is it's like one of the first natural remedies that we go to when we're trying to help kidney problems or kidney or bladder problems. We're told don't eat oranges because it's going to cause tooth enamel, and again, I would have no teeth if that were true. I eat oranges almost every single day, and I even had one this morning. We're told don't eat limes because they can give you a rash or interfere with medications. You can close that door if it's too loud for you guys. And then this next one, don't eat leafy greens because it interferes with medications. And if anybody wants to come up front, there's plenty of seats up here too, so you can hear better. So this next one I think is a little kind of funny, or ironic I should say, that we're told don't eat leafy greens because it interferes with medications. Now the reason is because when someone is on a medication for blood coagulation, they have coagulation problems, or they had a heart attack, and so the doctor gives them an anticoagulation drug. And so the greens act directly opposite to it, and it makes it very difficult to titrate that medication. So what needs to really happen is when I have a client that comes to me and says that I'm on an anticoagulation drug and my job is not to work, I do not do anything with drugs. I'm not a medical doctor. But what I can do is I can work with the medical doctor, and I can work with the coag nurse. So I contact them and say, look, we have a common client, and they want to get off their medications, and they want to start eating better, so we have to work together here. And so we have to end up making a deal, and that deal is I say, okay, to the patient, if you want to get better and you're on these drugs for now, you must maintain a safe level or a common level of greens, because that's what's making it so hard for them to titrate. And so as soon as the patient starts eating greens every single day, the same amount, then the problem goes away. So that's how we work that out. And eventually they will get off their drugs. We're told don't eat strawberries because they're bad for the environment. I believe that there was somebody here who asked me about produce and the GMOs and the pesticides and everything that's put on them. I want to tell you something. In the North America, I shared yesterday that in answering that partially, because I partially answered your question, but let me answer it the rest of the way. In North America, there's this group called the Environmental Working Group, and they test all of they test like 30 or 40, 50 different produces, and then they test how many chemicals are on them. And then they grade them according to how many pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and everything else. Strawberries have always come up number one for the last many years. It is strawberries, I think it's like 15 different sprays that are found on it, and they're all endocrine disruptors, or most of them, and they're all creating health problems. And so you can juice those strawberries and spray them onto a field, and they are considered a pesticide. And you're not adding anything to it. That's how dirty they are. Do you get that? Yet, I will never tell somebody to not eat non-organic strawberries. Why? It's because of the process called bioaccumulation. I'm going to explain it in the form of fish to make it really easy. Fish, our oceans are so toxic that our little fish are filled with toxins. And what they do is they're eating whatever they eat, the plankton and things off the bottom, and maybe, other plants, and everything that they eat has toxins on them, and they may live 5 years, so that means that they are accumulating 5 years of toxins in their little tiny body, in their fat cells and in their muscle cells. Now you got a fish this big that eats 20 of those little fish a day, and as it eats those fish 20 a day, I don't know how many they eat, I'm just making these numbers up, and so now all of those toxins get accumulated in their little bodies, in their fat cells, and in their muscle cells. And now, and that fish lives 5 years, and now you've got a bigger fish now that eats those smaller fish, and because they're bigger, maybe they only eat 5 a day. And so now the 5 that they eat every single day for 5 years now accumulates in their body. And now you get a fish that's this big, and now it eats, 5 of those that's this big, until you get up to some really big fish. And so what's happening here is the larger the fish, the more the toxins. It's called bioaccumulation. We only have one level of accumulation on fruits and vegetables. We don't have a multitude of accumulation. We can never freeze or cook out the accumulated toxins. They're just there. They're stuck. And then we end up having to go on a detox program because we're sick. That's why I will never tell someone to give up non-organic strawberries or any other non-organic produce. I will only worry about that, because remember, I work on a hierarchy. I want to get everybody on a whole food, plant-based, unrefined, gluten-free diet to start out with, complete health reform. And now I can start working on, okay, the dirty dozen, the top 12 produce items, now get those organic. And anything that is GMO, get those organic. You see how I work on a hierarchy? That's why I would never consider telling someone don't eat non-organic strawberries. Yes, I understand the issues, but the issues with meat and dairy and sugar and processed foods and eggs are multiple times worse. And if we are going to give up our produce because of the pesticides, then we must give up meat and dairy and eggs because they have multiple times more. And if you're going to give up your produce, your fruits and vegetables, what's left? You only have grains, beans, nuts, meat, dairy. That's all you have left. Eggs. See, now you've eliminated a complete food category that has all of these things, and these are what heals us. This is the miracle of the health reform message. That's the miracle. There is still plenty. Yes, we may not have as much vitamins and minerals and nutrients as 20 years ago in our produce, but it still has enough to heal us. Praise God. All right, and then we have the fad diets never include an all-fruit feast, yet that's our counsel. I'm going to get to that so you can kind of see what that looks like. So a fad diet always says that you need to cut down the fruit or completely eliminate it. I used to have, next to each one of these, I used to have research articles next to each one of these, but I took them out because we have become people of the research. I don't want to convince you to eat God's way because of the research. I want you to eat God's way because that's what His Word says. We need to get away from being people of the research and switching to being people back to the Word again. That's what God says. It doesn't matter what the research says. I don't care if there's 20 research out there, articles that says that fruit is bad. I don't care how many doctors out there say, oh, don't eat fruit for your diabetes. Don't do it. I don't care what the world says. I don't care what the National Association says. The research is riddled with proof that shows that a whole food plant-based diet can reverse or it greatly improve every single one of these conditions. Diabetes, heart disease, obesity, cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, stroke. It promotes bone health, detoxification, eye conditions, autoimmune disease, arthritis, asthma, inflammatory disease, mental health issue, mood imbalances, brain deterioration, bowel diseases, headache, migraine. The list just goes on and on. But yet, when it comes to money and marketing, you hear just the opposite many times. And we're told, oh, if you have diabetes, if you have obesity, if you have candida, if you have fungal problems, don't eat fruit. If you have cancer, don't eat fruit. So let me explain what's happening here, because I want you to understand at a physiological level of what's happening. Now, this is a simple version of it. I don't know if you guys are medical. I have no idea what any of your degrees are. If you're pre-med, I don't even know what degrees they offer here, other than sociology. And so let me explain what's happening here. So this is a normal cell, and all of our cells have an insulin receptor site. This insulin receptor site has a doorknob on it with a particular key that has to go in. This is the insulin that goes in, and so the insulin unlocks the door opens, it throws in the glucose, because our pancreas is multiple times a second, it is tasting our blood. And how sweet is it? The faster that our blood sugar rises is the faster then that our pancreas starts to produce insulin, because it needs to keep our blood sugar normal. And when our blood sugar remains high, our pancreas is forced to produce more insulin. So this is like the key, like you have a lock to your car or to your home. I have a lock. I'm going to use a lock to my gate of our property to start out with. This lock has a very specific key to it. And I'm using an outdoor lock for a reason here, because I'm going to use it for a demonstration. But it's the same key that you would use to get into your house, get into the car, get into a gate, whatever. And so it must be the perfect match, because your car key will not fit into your house. So as the blood sugars start going up, then the insulin goes over to the muscle cells and says, knock, knock, the blood cells are high, the blood sugar is high, can I put glucose in? And the muscle cell says, sure, of course you can, because that's what I do. I have to have glucose in order to run, so bring it on in. And so the insulin says, oh, wonderful. So it unlocks the door, and it starts to fill up the muscles, but then as our blood sugars start to go up again, the muscle says, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't know you had that much glucose. I can take as much as I can, but whoa, enough is enough. It's like when you if you live in a dorm, if you live in one of the housing here, there's only so many people that can fit into your dorm, right? If you're gonna have an after hours party in your dorm, you can only fit so many people in your dorm room. You can't fit 100 people in there. If you fit 20, there's gonna be like not much room to walk around. But eventually you're gonna have to, if there's more people that are gonna be coming to your dorm room for the after hours party, you're gonna have to close your door and say, I'm sorry, but there's enough. And that's exactly what the muscles say. Enough's enough. I didn't realize you had that much. And so now the insulin goes over to the liver and says, knock, knock, can you take in some sugar? The muscle cells are full, and the liver says, sure, come on in. I am a storage unit for glucose. Bring it on in. And the insulin is like, all right. So it goes over there, and it starts throwing in all the glucose, and then eventually the liver says, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, enough is enough. I can't take anymore. I'm overloaded. And now the insulin is panicked and says, oh no, now what do I do? I can't put it in the muscle cells. I can't put it in the liver. And now I'm going to have to go to my fat cells. The fat cells do not want to take in glucose. They are insulin resistant to begin with, naturally. But in order for the body to do what it has to do, the pancreas starts to produce more insulin. And so as we get more insulin, now what's happening is you have 20 people in your dorm room, and you're like, no more, and you call, and one person says, oh, I want in, and you're like, we're at the max. There's nowhere for you. And now the person standing outside is mad because they want to get in too. They want to be part of the party. And then there's someone else that comes, and someone else, and the guy says, I'm sorry, but there's already 20 people in there and it's full. And people are, well, I don't like that idea. I want to join the fun too. Until you got 20 people outside, and now they all start bombarding through the door. Eventually, those 20 people will get through that door. One or two will probably not get through that door. 20 will. That's what happens with the pancreas. It just starts overloading the body with insulin. And now the fat cells, even though it has its own insulin receptor site as well, now we've got 20 people or 20 insulins on the outside of the cell trying to bust its way in. And eventually it gets in, and you see that a normal fat cell should be flat and squishy, but as we start to fill up our fat cells with glucose and fat and all the other junk that we eat, now we start to get fat and gain weight, and now our insulin receptor sites get big, and we get big. Now, because the shape of the cell has changed, it actually distorts now the shape of the door. And now you've got insulin resistance again. And another thing that happens, even if we are slender and of normal weight, another thing that creates insulin resistance is animal products. We don't hear about this too often, but animal products is the body's #1 producer of insulin. It's the most powerful insulin producer of any other food. More than fruit, more than sugar, more than anything. It's animal products. Diabetes is a fat problem, not a sugar problem. The marketing and some of the food industry would like us to believe that it is a sugar issue. It's a fat problem. This is Satan's war on fruit, where God says you can eat of all these other trees, but not of that one. And Satan comes along and says, well, didn't God say that you could eat of all the trees of the garden? Well, yes, he did. But he also said, you see how what Satan said is a half-truth, half-lie. That's what I'm explaining here. Marketing is a half-lie and half-truth. When I eat sugar and glucose, yes, my sugars do go up when I am eating animal products. Because if my lock now is outside, and even though I am of normal weight, if I am eating too much animal products, that saturated fat and cholesterol gets into the insulin receptor site and clogs it. It's just like my lock, that if it rains by day in the winter, which is quite routine, and then by night it freezes, and now if I've spent out all night and I'm coming home in the morning, or I'm trying to get out in the morning and I put my key in, I can't get in because it's frozen closed. There's still nothing wrong with the glucose. There's nothing wrong with the key. The key is absolutely the right key. I cannot use another key. So the body now continues to produce more insulin because the blood sugar keeps rising and rising, and then it really gets high when I'm eating more sugar, more fruit, anything with glucose. So how do I get back into my lock? I have to get a little blowtorch that I keep in my car, and I have to blowtorch and I have to dry that lock out. Then I can put the key in, unlock it, open up the gate, or open up the house, and everyone who needs to go into the house, now you close the door behind you and everybody's happy. It's half truth, half lie. What we need to do is not cut out the fruit, we need to cut out the root problem. The root problem are animal products. It's the fat and it's the saturated fat and the cholesterol that is causing the problem. We can give people diabetes. There's a wonderful research out there that we can give people diabetes in 2 weeks by giving them a very high fat diet. 2 weeks. You can give, and the one study that I'm thinking of that will resonate with you are college medical students. So they're just in their young 20s, and they are in 2 weeks, they're given diabetes, insulin resistance, and their blood sugars are already starting to go up. So how do we reverse it? You see, the cause, or the reversal, is in the cause. When we understand the root cause, and we get rid of the root cause, which is the meat and the dairy, now we can, all that clogging comes out, because now we have to stop the poison, so-called, from coming in, and we have to replace that calories now with fiber. And when we replace it with meat, with fruits and vegetables, lots of fruit, that kind of fiber takes all that muck and gunk out of the insulin receptor site, out of the lock, and now the pancreas can slow down. It doesn't have to be stressed anymore. The insulin can get into its site. The blood sugar stays normal. It's an amazing process. That's the full circle truth. God says you will die if you eat of that forbidden tree. That's the half lie, half truth. He only told us half the truth. So let's look at some inspiration here. And I want to, now these are all come out of Councils on Diet and Foods, and I want you to do, at some point in the future, I want you to actually do a word search, like I taught you yesterday. Do a word search on fruit. You're going to be quite amazed at what you're going to learn. So it says, we may use fruit freely, and in different ways, and run no risk of incurring the diseases that are incurred by using the flesh of diseased animals. What are those diseases that we can get? There we go. There's your list of diseases. These diseases are not caused by fruit. So God says that we will not get those diseases by eating fruit. Fruit is never the cause. So she, your wife, lacks vitality and needs a generous, strengthening diet. Remember, I've taught you that we have to use God's definition, not ours, of different words. How is God then defining that? How is he defining a generous diet? She should have a good supply of fruit and not be confined to the same things from day to day. She has a slender hold of life. She is diseased, and the wants of her system are far different from those of a healthy person. Who knows what disease she has? She's probably got end-stage cancer. I don't know. But she's very, very sick. She's on her bed, on her deathbed. And what is God's remedy? Fruit. You see that? And yet, if we have cancer or we're riddled with disease and we're on our deathbed, generally the last thing that we think about is fruit. For a dyspeptic stomach, which is indigestion, you may place upon your table fruits of different kinds, but not too many at one meal. So dyspeptic stomach is indigestion, a lot less severe, of course. And again, how many people think of fruit when you've got indigestion? The more we depend upon the fresh fruit, just as it is plucked from the tree, the greater will be the blessing. A plain, simple, but liberal supply of fruit is the best food that can be placed before those who are preparing for the work of God. A fruit diet for a few days has often brought great relief for brain workers. What are we talking about? We're talking about a fruit fast here. Only fruit for a couple of days. And yet, all the fad diets say, don't eat fruit. So when I started to understand these principles, I started to apply these to my own patients. And it's amazing, God is absolutely right. That's the miracle of health reform if we just trust him. Let us trust him. It says, wherever fruit can be grown in abundance, a liberal supply should be prepared for winter. It doesn't say vegetables, wherever vegetables can be grown. It says fruit. And apples are superior to any fruit for a standby that grows. The humble apple, imagine that. Pretty much available worldwide almost. All should be acquainted with the special value of fruits and vegetables fresh from the orchard or garden. She only uses things that are unique, like descriptors of special value when she attributes to vegetables, only when it also includes fruit. She never uses these descriptors when vegetables are used alone. Do a word search with vegetables in your Counsel on Diet and Foods as well. Don't eat largely of salt. Avoid the use of pickles and spiced food. Eat an abundance of fruit, and the irritation that caused for so much drink at mealtime will largely disappear. People who have to take a sip with every drink, every bite that they have, they can help themselves by eating a ton more fruit. It would be well for those, now this is we're talking about meal prep here. It would be well for us to do less cooking and eat more fruit in its natural state. Let us teach the people to eat freely of the fresh grapes, apples, peaches, pears, berries, and all other kinds of fruit that can be obtained. Let these be prepared for winter. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. Let them teach the people to preserve the health and increase the strength by what? By Yes, by avoiding the large amount of cooking that has filled the world with chronic invalids. That means even if you are a health reformer, you've got to cut down the amount of cooking and have more fruit. Kenyans are, I think, famous for your high starch diet, because that's most of what you guys eat from what I've observed. Very high starch and very little fruit, if any, and even less raw vegetables. When I was here for 2.5 months, I kept asking for a green salad all the time. I got 3 the entire 2.5 months. I asked somebody last week, why don't you guys eat like more greens and green salads? Because people look at me, I mean, I'm eating these giant green salads, and I, people are looking at me like I'm very strange. And I was told, well, no one's told us that it's healthy, and has given us permission to eat like that. And I said, well, I'm giving you permission right now. And he says, oh, okay. I'll have to check with him, see if he's eating his greens now. So we need to cut down on our cooking, more fruit in its natural state. Let those who advocate health reform strive earnestly to make it all that they claim it is. Let them discard everything. Does that say 99%? Or does that say everything except when it comes to Christmas or birthdays or Easter? It says everything. That means all times, forever, we give it up. My Christmas dinners and birthday parties and probably look quite different than most other people's, but there's always an abundance of food on the table, and it's always delicious, and I always have happy people at my table. I've yet to have somebody complain about my food who is there for that purpose. Fruit is excellent and saves much cooking. It's not fruit that is the problem of all these diseases. All fruit, every single piece of fruit is a superfood. Every single one of them. But Satan was the most subtle of all of them, and we've believed his lie. I'm just going to go through these quickly. So do not practice economy in this direction. Provide an abundance of food, of good, wholesome food. Restrict your meat bills, but have plenty of good fruits and vegetables, and there you will enjoy seeing the hearty appetite with which all will partake of your preparations. Never feel, there's that word never. Never feel that good hygienic food that is eaten is lost. It will make a blood and muscle and give strength for the daily duties. So here we are, God is telling us that we are to restrict everything else first and never our food. Out of our budget, food is number 1. Schooling, books, traveling, vehicle, buying a home is all secondary to our diet. It's all secondary. If we cannot afford a good, healthy diet, then we cannot afford these other things. Everything else that we do in our life, the number 1 is we must be able to afford a healthy, health reform diet. Number 1. Then, if we have extra money, then we can go to college, then we can buy a car, then we can buy our books or go traveling, but it's never the other way around. And yet we've been taught that it is our food that is usually last. I'm going to buy my books, I have to pay my car payment, my rent, I have to pay all this stuff, and now I'm going to find the cheapest food that I can find. It's another way of thinking. I see some laughs there. I think I hit a couple of nerves, hey? So fruit, if it can be obtained, is the best article of food. Let the same amount of money expended for meat be used to purchase fruit. Every penny, every single shilling expended for tea, coffee, and flesh meat is worse than wasted, for these things hinder the best development of the physical, mental, and spiritual powers. Let fruit be placed on the table of abundance. Make fruit the article of diet to be placed on your table. A table for your helper should be furnished not with meat, but with an abundant supply of good fruit, grains, and vegetables prepared in a nice, wholesome way. Let's look at these. The Lord intends to bring his people back. He's bringing us back to something, to live upon the simple fruits, vegetables, and grains. God provided fruit in its natural state for our first parents. In order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan. We're talking about the Garden of Eden diet. He who created man, who understands his needs, appointed him his food. Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, and every tree in which is of the fruit. For you it shall be for food. And here we go. By precept and example, make it plain that the food which God gave Adam in his sinless state is the best for man's use as he seeks to regain that sinless state. To me, this is like, hello, this is the mark of this is the end time. This is the second coming. This is the 144,000. This is like, stand up and take note. This is like something that I would print out on a piece of paper and stick on my refrigerator kind of thing. So this is where God is taking us, and this is more like, this is leading us into tomorrow's talk. When we have this foundation understood, it can take us into tomorrow's talk. In grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts are to be found all the food elements that we need. If we will come to the Lord in simplicity of mind, he will teach us how to prepare wholesome food free from the taint of flesh meat. So in fruit season, Ellen White's talking, blueberries and raspberries fresh from the bushel and strawberries fresh from the vine. We made the table fair an object lesson which showed those present that our diet, even though it wasn't in accordance with the principles of health reform, was far from being a meager one. Let no one think that he can do as he pleases in the matter of diet. You cannot afford to do otherwise. Let us comprehend these responsibilities and bear them nobly in the name of the Lord. We read this yesterday in Counsels on Diet and Foods. While sitting at the table, we may do medical missionary work by eating and drinking to the glory of God. We do the greatest medical missionary work many times when we don't say a word and we just kind of zip it. And we just sit down with our plate of health reform and we just let our plate speak for itself. Many times that's a bigger sermon than anything that we may speak. And I can attest to that with my own experiences. It's amazing how a plate speaks. I'm going to give you one example. I was at a church one time, and they had invited me. I wasn't there for them. I was visiting a place. They heard that I gave talks, so they asked if I would give a talk. And I gave a talk, and so they didn't know anything that I believed. It was the health leader that I was talking to, and she says, "Oh, while you're here, why don't you speak next week?" And so the pastor agreed, and I spoke, and I spoke, well, you've heard what I speak about, and during potluck, there was only one item for me to eat. There was nothing on that table that was health reform. But did I say anything? I didn't say a word. I was incredibly grateful that there was one item. And the only thing that was on the table that I could eat was spinach. So I loaded up my plate like with a huge mound of spinach, because it was also a giant bowl. I mean, it was enough for like 100 people there. And I also know the very small amount of salads that people take, so I knew I was pretty safe in taking what I wanted. And so I took this mounding. I couldn't have anything on it because there was no dressing, no nothing. So I just sat at my table, and everybody else was already sitting down, and you can imagine the eyes that went to my plate when I sat down. I didn't say a word. I just started pleasant conversation. And they opened up conversation, and the whole table was interested why I was eating the way I ate. They asked me then to give a health nugget the next week, and so we had a wonderful conversation around the table. Everybody was totally amazed, and the next week, 100% of what was on the table was health reform. 100%. That's the power of not saying anything until you're asked. And if they don't ask, you don't tell. You just give pleasant conversation and enjoy people's company, and we never talk about people's food. And I do not make it a habit. I do not talk about, even when people ask me questions, if I'm a speaker somewhere and we're all sitting down at a table and someone asks me a diet question, the hairs on my back kind of stand up. Because not unless I know that everybody at that table wants to know that answer, I skirt the issue. I change the topic. Or I'll tell them, I'll tell you later. I've used that one many times. Because it's not my job to offend people or to be telling people something that they don't want to know. Do you see what I mean? So we do the greatest medical missionary work at the table. So as we near the close of time, we must rise higher and still higher. You see, it's a step-by-step process. It's not an all or none. It's not tomorrow morning and you're going to wake up a total health reformer. Upon the question of health reform and Christian temperance, presenting in a more positive and decided manner, we are to present this in a positive way, not in a judgmental, finger-pointing, gossiping, talking about how people eat. That's not positive. So if you present health reform, please do it in a positive manner, non-judgmental. We must strive continually to educate the people, not only by our words, but by our practice. Precept and practice combined have a telling influence. This is what I see as how the food guide pyramid looks according to the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy. When you do a word search in Councils on Diet and Foods, if you look up fruit, these are the words that you are going to read. Abundantly, freely, liberally, best, superior, blessing, more, fruit, fast, depend upon, and largely. That's why it's the largest group here. All fruits are a superfood. The next one are vegetables. When you do a word search, these are the words that you're going to read. Largely with fruit. It doesn't say largely alone. It's largely with fruit. So it's fruits and vegetables. Eat largely of fruits and vegetables. Encourage fruits with vegetables. Properly prepared, well prepared, some cannot use them. That means that if some cannot use them, that tells me that this food group must not be absolutely necessary. But what we do see is the greens, because if we're going to eat an all-fruit diet and we're going to be low in some minerals, greens are the one that actually will make up those excess with a few nuts and seeds for the fat that we need. And that's why you see the greens here in the middle, and then you have a partial here for the root vegetables and so that's starch-based vegetables, and that is water-based vegetables. When you look up and do grains and beans and do a word search, it says grains and beans with fruits and vegetables is the diet chosen for us by our Creator. Some cannot use them. Ellen White was one person who could not use beans. Again, that tells me that this food group is not absolutely necessary. I'm not telling you, please, I'm not telling you not to eat these. I'm just making a case for fruits and vegetables, because that's supposed to be the base of our meals. So I'm not telling you not to eat them at all, because they are part of our health message. But if we can't eat them, we can't eat them. And they are to be prepared without grease and to be prepared simply. And then nuts, if you do another word search, do not use too much. They are used unwisely. Some are less wholesome than others. She specifically uses peanuts are less wholesome than almonds. Do not use them freely. They are very rich, and use 1/10 to 1/6 of what's in the recipe. This is how I feed anybody that comes to my home for health reform. If they're going to stay at my house for 10 days, this is how I feed them. Let me give you a little story. This is a woman who came to me riddled with gout. So severely bad that all the drugs in the world were not controlling her pain. She was completely bedridden and had been for a few years. Her husband, who is the same age, very elderly couple, was not physically able to take care of them anymore, or take care of her anymore. And so he gave her an ultimatum, because he couldn't do it anymore. And so he said to her, honey, we've got to do something different. I can't do this anymore. So you either go to Dr. Janie's house and see if she can help, or you go to a nursing home. And he told me that she crossed her arms and she says, I'm not going to either one. And he says, well, I'm sorry, honey, but you've got to make a choice because you can't stay home anymore. Total bed rest. He was changing her diaper. He was doing everything. And so finally when he said, well, if you're not going to make a choice and I'm going to make the choice for you, you have to go to a nursing home. Her arms are crossed and she said, fine, I'll go see if Dr. Janie can help. And that's how she came to me. Very unwilling participant. She came to me, and me and two men had to carry her into the house. And so as we're carrying her in, I am just like, what have I gotten myself into? This is just like too much for me, I think. I'm way over my head with someone who's total bedbound. I didn't realize she was that bad. And she couldn't even move. Her gout was just so incredibly painful and bad. 7 days later, I am asking her, how's your gout? And she's sitting in the chair, in her wheelchair, because we'd have to give her up and down from the wheelchair, or her husband would every day. And she's sitting there, and she looks up into the ceiling, and she says, I don't know. And I said, well, do you have pain right now? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, well, where was your pain when you got here? She's still looking up at the ceiling. I don't know. And that's the way she said it. And I said, well, like, where's your pain right now? And she looks and she says, and I said, do you have pain? And she says, no. And I said, why are you still sitting in your wheelchair then? And I got her up, and here she is, day 7. She's walking with assistance with her walker, but this is 6 weeks later. Her family kept her on health reform. 6 weeks later, no, she's walking without assistance. You see, that's the power of health reform. That's the power of a high fruit diet with large salads and sides of starch, if any. This is another lady. It's quite a poor picture because it's on the wall, but if you could see it better, you see the lines in her forehead. You see how hardened she kind of looks in her whole face? You see how gaunt her eyes look? She's got inflammation around her face. You can see even her lips. You can see her eyebrows, how unhealthy they look. And here, this is, she was at my house for 10 days. This is on day 9 when I took this picture. Look at the peace now that's on her face. Look at the life that's come back to her eyes. Look at the inflammation from around her chin and around her face that is now gone. Look at her lips and her eyebrows compared to over here. That's 9 days later on health reform. She came to me with severe fatigue. She hardly could walk, probably 100 feet. And she was fatigued and she needed to sit in a chair. This is a woman who came to me. This is a woman who came to me with a continuous glucose monitor. And you can see how high her blood sugars are: 16.9, 18.7, 19.0, 19.1, 17.3. Her urinalysis is still high with ketones as well as glucose. Now here is the amazing thing. She's now at my house on day 7, the same day that the other lady is walking. They came together. I mean, not together, they didn't know each other, but they came in the same program. Now this is day 30. This is a continuous glucose monitor here. On day 7, I ask to look at her continuous glucose monitor. I'm sorry that I didn't take it on day 1, but you saw the labs there. And here she is. She's got an A1C of an average blood sugar of 11.6. She's got 40% of her blood sugars in range, 24% very high, 36% high, 1% very low. Standard deviation of 3.1. Here, I said, now this is still the same day. This is November 20th, day 30, 7 days at my house, 14 days, 7 days at my house. I said, what's your blood sugars been doing for the last 7 days? 14 days, 7 at my house. 10.5, 2.9 standard deviation, 58% of her blood sugars are in range. That's no lows, no very lows, 11% very high, and 31% high. Same date, November 20th. Now I said, let me see what your blood sugars have been doing over the last 7 days. 8.6, 1.9, 91% in range. I said, what have your blood sugars been doing over the last 2 days, yesterday and today? 8.6, 1.2, 98% in range. This is now the next day, the 21st, 7.7, 1.0 standard deviation, 100% of her sugars are now in range. She went from 150 units down to less than 10 by the time she left. 10 days. That is a high fruit diet. The first couple of days, you're going to see wild fluctuations. So I tell people, don't even concern yourself with the first 3 days. The first 3 days, let the fruit work out the insulin receptor sites, get all that muck and gunk out. Your blood sugars are going to rise. Do not fear. Let the process work itself out. Because she asked me, I asked her on day 1 during the intake, what foods are you most afraid of? Fruit and potatoes. During our conversation, she said, what's for our meals? Fruit and potatoes. See, she could have said anything. Mangoes, blueberries, potatoes. I don't care what she would have said, as long as it was within the plant group, because it's always fruit that people tell me. Whatever they say is what they're going to eat. Because I want them to eat their worst, terrified foods that they have been taught again and again to not eat, and I want them to eat it with these results. And that's what happens. And she even got an all-fruit feast for 1 whole day. Only fruit, a fruit fast. That's the power of health reform. That's the power of following it all the way through. See, this is why people eat this junk food. This is $2 Canadian, and it's just so junky. We are what we eat. It's too bad that most of us are still in this category when 70% of us are dying from lifestyle-related diseases. These good doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals that know about lifestyle, it's very difficult to make a living right now, but you know, for the last couple of years, it's actually boosting. People who are going into private practice, teaching people about diet and lifestyle, their businesses are now starting to boom. Praise the Lord. The law of natural health is that we are what we eat. This is one example of what my counter looks like after. This is only, I took this picture after I'd already put everything in the refrigerator. So these are things that were just sitting out for the day already. This is what my counter looks like before I put anything in the refrigerator. This is for 2 weeks for 2 people, but on the second week, I'm already probably going to be supplementing it with something else. These are some examples of how I understand health reform. This is a fruit smoothie and a couple more fruit smoothies. These would be like an all fruit feast if I was going to do a fruit fast, minus the nuts. And, so I'd have a smoothie. This is bread that's made out of 100% flax. This is bread made out of black beans. This is a homemade granola. Notice the pattern here. Large fruit dishes, side dish as the starch. This is an apple pie that I've made. It's apples and dates and all sorts of yummy things, and some nuts as the base. This is flax bread, a different kind. It's been dehydrated, and you can see. Then this is a hot cereal. This is a blueberry pie, breakfast pie with millet, and you can see all the fruit there. This is, you can see there's the fork. I left it in there on purpose so you could see how big that is. That is considered to be, for most people, that is a serving bowl. And there's some chia and flax. You can see there's a whole bunch of blueberries in there. And these are waffles. And some. This is a oatmeal breakfast. You can see all that fruit with bread and hummus. Hummus is made out of beans, and the bread is made out of buckwheat. There are times when I do fruit fasts or only a melon fast. This is oat bread here. This is a soup and some chia. I love my dates with nut butter on them. So there's some teff. I told you that I would show you today what John the Baptist food looked like. The insects that sometimes people think that the locust is an insect. It wasn't an insect. It was carob. That's what this is, carob, and it makes things taste chocolatey. So in my teff, I put carob, and it tastes chocolatey, and it's very good. And there is another large salad, and everything is, from my understanding, is fruit combined properly. This is a banana split, which is generally quite unhealthy, but this is 100% fruit. This is 100% raspberry ice cream, 100% banana ice cream, 100% strawberry ice cream. This is dates and water, and this is carob, a carob sauce to go on top. And then I've got some nuts on top. This is also, this wrap here is made out of dehydrated banana. I just squish it and roll it into a chapati-like, and I put fruit in it and on it. And I got that picture twice. Now this would be like a fruit fast for me. This is another fruit fast. This actually was a Thanksgiving dinner for me, because I went to a place for Thanksgiving that that all they served was just meat. And I wanted to be a rebel on purpose. I wanted to make a statement without any words. And, and you can bet that everybody was looking at my tray. And of course they wanted to partake of it too. It's so beautiful. But this would be considered a fruit fast when all you eat are just is fruit. These are bread. They're flat bread, yeast-free, made out of just beans, like red lentils or yellow or green split peas. These are hot cereals with all that fruit, nut butter. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through that. I love my smoothies, as you can see. This is a pancake made out of flax. Flax is really good for omega-3s. This is a plantain, the fruit plantain that looks like a banana. I cut it before I was like, oh, I should have taken a picture of it. So at least you can see what it looks like here. That's a plantain breakfast cake. So you can see that I don't eat only fruit. I do eat other things as well, but people always ask me, you know, what do you eat for fruit? And so these are some other meals, but this would be a burger that's made out of oats and beans, and then I put it on a bed of lettuce. My husband, he will eat it on bread. I don't like bread, but he does. And then there's some guacamole, and there's pickles that are made without vinegar, corn on the cob, salad. So these are just kind of like some examples of other things that we would eat other than just fruit. This is what I would use as like hamburger. It's a crumble, and there's a meatloaf, a non-meatloaf, a cold salad. So you can see that we do eat other things other than just fruit. There's a baked potato bar with, and this is the actual baked potato bar. So I just make a whole bunch of stuff, and our baked potato is our main dish, and then some meatloaf. These are some crackers with a chili that I make. Then that's homemade tofu that I make with homemade bread. Everything's homemade. These are some desserts. So my diet is not boring whatsoever, absolutely delicious. I love my sprouts. I eat a lot of sprouts. And my dog eats like this too. That's his bowl, her bowl. This is where I love to shop, places like this. And these are some happy people at my table. So I want to stop there, and it's 7:08. So I think that we are going to have to end without any Q&A. But is there anything that is like pressing that you want to ask that can't wait until tomorrow? Yes. I'm just going to take one question here because of the time. Does somebody have that roving mic? Oh, no, back here. So I'll take your question either tomorrow, or I'll take it, or come to me, okay? Because I still want to answer it. Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So my question was just about, I've gotten good words, and we should reform on how we eat, especially, but there is this problem which I think many of us are experiencing. Like in Kenya, we are a third world country, and so don't laugh. In Kenya, we are a third world country, and so people are coming from humble backgrounds, I know, and if I look at the diet, maybe to me, I can just say that it's expensive. So maybe at home, because you can only choose on what to eat if there are varieties. So maybe, like I know most of us depend on parents, and what parent bring on the table is what you will take. So maybe it's not according to how health reform tells us, and that is the only thing you can find on your table. So how can you deal with this situation?
Yes, so someone asked me that before as well. We are actually, our council says that we are not absolved even if we are the most poorest. We are not absolved. This is the diet of God's people. So, but I want to be gentle because this does not happen overnight. But what we can do is start to reform somewhere for what we can do. And I have been, for almost 30 years, I have been working with anywhere from the poorest of the poor that they are on, in North America, that they are on disability. They barely have any money left for anything after their medical cares and after their rent. They hardly have anything left. When they start to open up their pocketbook to me and I can see where they are spending their money, I have a whole hour talk on how to go whole food plant-based on a diet, on a budget, based upon my almost 30 years of experience. And I don't have time to give that here, but I'm glad to share the handout with you. But what I do is I go through line by line with people. And where there's a will, there's a way. And we all of you can start to make changes in one way or another. It's not for me to say what changes you make or what change you make first or how long it takes you to get there, but it's your God-given duty to uphold health reform wherever you are in the process. You may not be where I am, and you don't have to be. And God doesn't expect you to be. I'm on this journey much longer. But no one is absolved for any reason, not even for a lack of funds. We can't say that health reform is wrong because we've walked away from God's precepts, and we have. We don't live in the country. We don't grow our own food. We're not where it would be really, this kind of diet would be very, very doable. And if all we have is fruit trees and greens, and we buy some nuts and seeds, we're going to literally have everything that we need for good health. I'm not saying that's all we should have. Please understand, because our council also says beans and grains are fine too, but what I'm trying to show is that if that's all we can grow is fruits and greens and get some nuts and seeds, I don't know if those trees grow here or not, probably do, but that's all we need. And then we can eat for very inexpensive. So the problem comes because we're not following the council. I don't mean this to you, and I don't mean disrespect to anybody, but what I'm saying is that God He will still count us guilty if we're not at least on the track. He wants us to at least get on the, if all we can do right now is switch from white rice to brown rice, we're on the road. If all we can do is, have one extra piece of fruit a day, then that's what we do. If we can at least add a salad, that's what we can do. If we can add more whole grains or add more beans, that's what we can do. There's so many things that we can do that we have control over. And that is, our budgeting, where God said that we are to not have a budget, or we are not to economize for anything else. We are not to economize when it comes to our food. Food is primary. It is our number one. So I just say, take it to the Lord. He knows your circumstance, but He will not absolve us by going to college and then we let our health go. We must have health reform as part of our foundation. We must, because that is our prophetic direction. And when you listen to tomorrow's talk, you're going to get even a broader understanding. So I just say, start where you can and ask God to help you. You are the only one that has complete control over your food. We can't blame somebody else because that's just what somebody put in front of me. It's what is in the cafeteria line. I don't even know if you guys have a cafeteria. But, so we have to start making difficult decisions. And that's where God's trying to keep us and trying to take us, and he's trying to get us to be part of that 144,000. So don't be overwhelmed. God knows your situation. He knows what's possible. He knows what's not possible. So leave it to him. Take it to him, and he will create a way, one change at a time. It's just literally one change at a time. So please don't be overwhelmed. Pray about it and study. Yes, so I was told I really shouldn't be taking any more questions, but yes.
Thank you so much. I know that you were tired, and for me it's just a comment on that question. I think sometimes you need to correct some myths about the diet. There's always a myth that the meat diet is more cheaper than the vegetable diet. I don't know where we get it from. You guys are students. Most of you are economics students. What's 1 kg of goat meat? 1 kg. It ranges between 700 to 1,000. 1 kg. 1 kilogram of goat meat. Meat, I think, is around 500. And if you boil that meat, if it's 1 kg, it will even shrink to something even smaller than 1 kg. If you buy the beans, maybe 2 kgs of beans, and you boil them, they are going to expand to 3.5 to almost 4 kgs because they take the water in. So if you compare the price of getting 2 kgs of beans with 1 kg of meat, I don't know how we do the maths, that now the meat becomes more cheaper than the vegetables. For the poor people, there are so many vegetables that are out there that we don't even know that we are using them. It's just that most of us don't travel in many places. Some of us, we only know that only vegetable we know is sukuma wiki, which is very expensive. If you go to West Africa, they give sukuma wiki to animals, and they eat and they take cassava leaves as that's their vegetables, and also the sweet potato. Yeah, do you know even that the blackjack is vegetables? I mean, there's so many. The Lord has made sure that wherever that you are in there, there's something that's abundant that is growing around. You know, like up country, most people come from those rainy areas. There's this vegetable called dodo. It came from Mexico. Very good for diabetics. It just grows wild. You can actually literally just go on and just pick it. But most of us don't understand that the vegetables, that there's a lot of abundant, that whatever solution that we have, God has a solution for it. And there's that, you know, the story of the bitter waters in Mara. When they were drinking the water and the water was bitter, there was a herb nearby which was a solution for that bitter water. And what Christ told them, stop complaining. Just pick the herb that's next to that water and put it in the water and it will be clean. There's a principle that Christ was putting in there. The Lord has provided. Something about it, these people say they are Western, we have a lot of, Janie, you came to our place. You went to our farm. We have a lot of, there's just a farm growing, there's just a lot of covers and we just left it open. Neighbors just come in, they pick as much as they can and they go away with them. I mean, they just keep on growing. I mean, there's so much that the Lord, that you said you cannot be poor. So he said, most of us sell our beans to go and buy sodas and mandazis for our children and eggs. And we say we are poor. That is a criminal offense. We have been telling that to our mothers. Find our mothers has kwashoko, and because the mothers are selling their ndengus, their beans, to go and buy mandazis for their children. And they say they are poor. That's a very poor excuse that we need to have. So I think this is a challenge for us. When we start, we realize that the Lord has enough for us to partake of it, and we'll never go, we can never go short of it. As long as we remain faithful and start somewhere, you will find there's plenty that God will provide for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for those clarifications. There's many times that I can find fruits and vegetables on sale. At least in North America, we have like a blueberry season, we have other berry season, so we buy a lot that will hold us throughout the year. And we buy things in season. We don't buy mangoes when they're out of season because they're too expensive. We see, if we are like Dr. Wusike said, that if we're buying sodas, we're buying meat and tea and coffee. You see, all of that meat now, all of those finances go into our health reform diet. The beans are much, much cheaper than meat. So we really have no excuse to not eat beans and to continue eating meat, because meat is very expensive now in North America, and someone told me it's very expensive here as well. And the price just keeps going up and up and up. So where there's a will, there's a way. We are not absolved no matter what our circumstance is. So I just say start somewhere with God. He will show you the way. And when you start becoming more aware, you're going to start seeing sales. You're going to start seeing, you're going to just start to learn to shop differently. You're going to learn to, when you're just wasting money on traveling or something else that is not necessary, if you got subscriptions or if you have a phone that you're paying for, a ton of stuff all the time on it, maybe all that's not necessary. But God does not ever hold us unacountable. We are always accountable no matter what our situation. And if I knew the exact page number, I would show it to you, but it's in Councils on Diet and Foods. That the poorest, if you just look up poor, I think that's where you might see it, to see that the poor will have they will think that they have the greatest disadvantage, but they are still under the same requirement. All right, so I can't take any more questions or comments, but let's come back tomorrow at 3 o'clock then. And we're going to get started pretty quickly, right at 3 o'clock, if possible. And, or at least, because I think we started at 3:30 today because of other things. So we'll start as soon as we can. And tomorrow's the last day. And we're going to do Councils on Diet and Foods and then Nebuchadnezzar's detox diet. So we're going to take you another step further than this one. And it'll just start to unravel in your mind and start to really make sense here. So let's end with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for attending with us right now. We thank you, Lord, for your grace and your mercy. We thank you that you know each one of our situations. We thank you, Lord, that you lead each one of us like a fingerprint, and if there's anyone here who is overwhelmed, I pray that your peace would just surround them, that they would rest carefully in your bosom, that they may not give any excuse for not following health reform, but to start on that red carpet somewhere and do something. And then, Lord, I know from one step to the next you will guide. This is a requirement for your people, and you don't absolve any of us. So I pray your blessings upon each person here with your mercy and your grace. I pray for your guidance for each one, Lord, and that they may find joy in health reform, not a burden, but that they would be joyful in the Lord. And until we come back tomorrow, I pray that you would bless us, and I leave them in your most capable hands between now and then. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.